All right, everybody, welcome back to the F-14 Tomcast and get ready for another fantastic episode. Today, we are going to have an awesome conversation. We're talking about the F-14 Tomcat Air Show Demo Team. So today, we're talking with a pilot and Rio team that showed off the Tomcat's maneuverability to millions of fans at air shows around the country. And I'm sure you're going to really enjoy some of these stories that they have for you today.
Hey, and something interesting about this episode, as you'll see in just a moment, Crunch did this one solo. You think he's got the energy for it? I do. Okay, due to some scheduling challenges, I wasn't available when the guests were available, so he hosted himself. Can't wait to see how he did, but also stick around because later in the show we have some announcements you won't want to miss.
On the flight deck, crews are now manning for the next launch. Time to clear the flight deck and catwalks. Stand well clear of all jet blasts, prop arcs, and exhaust. Time to start up the GO aircraft. Let's start them up.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the F-14 Tomcast. We have an amazing show lined up for today. Today, we're joined by two Tomcat demo pilot team guys, whatever you want to call us. So we've got John Saccomando, call sign Shorn, and Brian Rivera, call sign Ponch. They're joining us today to talk all about the F-14 Tomcat demo team as they flew it back in the day. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Crunch.
Hey, thank you, Crunch.
Oh, awesome. Well, hey guys, so what we like to do is we typically like to give everybody a little bit of background to just where you're from and how you got involved, how you got into Tomcats, and basically a 3-minute thumbnail arc of your career. So stand up and tell us about yourself. Shorn, why don't you get started? Where are you from?
I grew up actually born in Buffalo, still a diehard Bills fan, and they're finally good again. And
then, I didn't know that. Dude, I lived in North Tonawanda for like 12 years.
Hey, I was born in Kenmore Mercy Hospital right there in Tonawanda.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, so I ended up growing up the rest of my life here in Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, just outside of D.C. Decided to put in for ROTC scholarship, went to Georgia Tech, and had no idea what I wanted to do. And after doing one of those patrols during your summer, I went on one of the deterrent patrol actual SSBN patrols. And man, after 9 weeks straight underwater, I decided I wanted to be a pilot. So left to flight school, never having flown in my life. And I was just there to make it through. And after primary and intermediate, I ended up finished up primary actually hoping for P3s or E6s. Jets was my third choice.
Because you wanted to be an airline pilot. Everybody said go P3, so
I just wanted to make it. I just wanted to make it through flight school at that point. But Jets was my third choice because seeing all these guys that have wanted to fly Hornets and Tomcats for their entire lives, and their parents owned Pittses and Stearmans and things like that, I had zero flight time. So I thought, man, there's no way I'd finish Jets. But there I was, finished up, and Jody Richardson. I don't know if you know Jeffro Richardson, former F-14 pilot, was my XO at VT7, and he inspired me after 1v1 solo ACM flights against him. He inspired me to put F-14Ds down, and I was the last guy to get the specific F-14D assignment out of flight school. And then they went in to bring in the pool into the F-14 rag, and then they decided who got Ds. So I was very fortunate and ended up in super class. I know most of you guys have heard of those guys in the rag. They combined two classes when the F-14, they transitioned VF-213 to Ds, and they stopped us and made one big combined class, and I kind of blended in there and ended up in VF-213 back at the RAG after 3 years there. And Ponch and I were fortunate enough to be selected. We volunteered to do the demo, and Slammer Richardson, I believe, was who selected us, Ponch, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. After that, I did that with Ponch for a year. It was awesome. I flew Disco a couple of times. I actually flew with Roll Kaiser once, which was probably the worst demo of my life, but ended up paying off dividends later, and I made the Blue Angels. I honestly believe I made the Blue Angels because of that awful demo. That was that was a
bookmark that. We're coming back to that story.
Yeah, bookmark that one. It's a humbling story, but ended up going to the Blue Angels and was number 2 there for 2 years. After that tour, I went to VFA 41 in Lemoore, California, and flew Super Hornets for a couple of years. decided to transition into the reserves, got hired by Continental and furloughed subsequently, and ended up flying for the FBI for 6.5 years before I came back. Went to Under Armour for 2 and flew their corporate jets. And then I came back to the merged company with United, and I'm still in the reserves plugging away here. I'm nominated to put a star on. We'll see if the Senate actually confirms me. And then still chugging away for at least 3 more years, I hope, in the reserves.
Well, congratulations. Maybe we should see if we can hold the publication of this episode until after the Senate confirmation. Would that be?
That might be smart.
Oh, Ponch, how about you, sir?
Wow, my gosh. 36 years ago today, a movie came out called, what was it called? Top Gun?
Iron Eagle.
Yes. Iron Eagle, that's right. Yeah. So I was living in Colorado, surrounded by Zoomies, saw the movie, and I wanted to be a truck driver. So, I mean, that was my path. That's where I was going, right? Short story long, ended up dating a girl who was in the Navy, went out to San Diego, met some of her friends that were helicopter pilots, and I realized, wow, these guys aren't that bright. So maybe I could fit in. So I applied to get into officer candidate school, and I got into OCS, got selected to fly F-14s, graduated first in my class, which was pretty cool considering I'm a knucklehead and a knuckle dragger. Ended up with meeting Shorn up in VF-101. I was a class behind him. They were a super class. And then I ended up in VF-2. So went to the Bounty Hunters for 2 combat cruises. And right then, after your first tour, it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of push to get you to go to the weapons school to go be an instructor. And I think a lot of us had that opportunity. And it's, what was the calculus going on in my head at that time was Fallon, Nevada is not Miramar. Fallon, Nevada, not a lot of single women. I'm single. I think I'm going to Virginia Beach. Why? There's an F-14 out there with my name on it. Hopefully, maybe I can make the demo team. That'd be pretty cool. And I'll rush the Blue Angels while I'm out there. So that was the path I wanted to go on. So that's where I went. And I tell you, that was the coolest experience of my life. And just having you ask us to be on this brought back so many awesome memories of what was going on at that time. War was going on. We're out in front of the public, and we're doing a lot of recruiting then. In fact, a lot of people that we were demonstrating in front of, the kids in the audience are now flying jets today, right? I mean, they're on the front lines today. So it kind of ages us as well. But similar to Shorn, I ended up in the Navy Reserve. I did a few more years on active duty, transitioned out about 16 years after becoming a foreign area officer. Been there in the reserve since. I'm a captain with the Defense Innovation Unit. So right now focusing on accelerating commercial technology back into the DoD. So we're losing a war right now. The war is really about how fast can we accelerate our capabilities, not just with technology, but with our human capabilities. So happy to be part of that and glad I'm here.
All right. I could go on for a while. Real quick, what do you mean by we're losing the war here? In what space?
Well, not necessarily a maneuver warfare, not traditional.
No,
warfare,
I know, but for the audience, what do you mean by that?
Technology. We're losing capability. Just a quick example: if you're following Waze while you're driving your car and you get lost, we're losing human capability there. So we need to bring the human back to the forefront of fighting wars. Just going back to the weapons school, if you will, back to the origins of Top Gun. We ended up recognizing that the human in the cockpit matters more than the technology itself. So we need to shift back away from the technology focus more towards the human, and of course accelerate the technology the best we can too.
Well, all right. So I think I just want to take a real quick break here. I tell all the folks out here listening that obviously you two guys are, I feel wholly inadequate talking to you guys right now. I mean, seeing the arcs of your career and the things that you guys are involved in right now, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I wish Bio was here to see it. He's unavailable today. He's in San Diego on a trip, but this is really cool. I'm so excited to have you guys here. This is awesome. Hey, so let's get back to the Tomcat demo team. So you guys said that you were kind of like nominated or picked by Slammer. How did that work? He was the RAG CO. You were at the FRS. What happened in Oceania?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember exactly, Ponch, but I believe he put it out in an AOM, hey, we're going to pick demo teams for next year. And at that point, Ponch and I were pretty new instructors, had just shown up, and we were both D guys, so that meant we're HUD flyers, APG-71 radar. We didn't know really anything about the F-14A except that we didn't want to fly it. And so when you become when you become a RAG instructor, as a D guy, they make you train your instructor training syllabus in the A. And so then all of a sudden, you know, the cockpit of the A, you know, the cockpit of the D, and you've got the same engines and from the B to the D and the same cockpit from the B to the A. So all of a sudden you can fly all three magically. And so I threw my name in the hat thinking we were going to be flying the demo in the A. And then I would probably end up a smoking hole in the ground because it didn't have a HUD, so I was going to be a cripple from day one. But he ended up, announcing the names, and it was 4D guys. You remember that, Ponch? Because they were going to fly it in the D, and then in the B that had the HUD upgrade. So all about timing. You know, if we were A guys.
Holding up the selection letter.
I hope that was my date of birth that was blacked out. I don't care about my social.
They're all blacked out.
It was just, again, my career has been filled with these just right place at right time, and a lot of it is pure luck. I think I've been very fortunate with stuff like that. So it was, and to be with Ponch and Disco was amazing.
I think it's fair to, because it was and Stick was the fourth person, right? Do I have that right? Okay, yeah. And so now you four guys. I mean, yes, timing matters. You're fortunate. You could call it luck. You also make your own luck. You can't. Don't sell yourself short. You guys are all incredibly good pilots of Rios, right? I mean, let's face it. So it's not like Slammer went out and picked a bunch of He did pick a bunch of knuckleheads, but they're good pilots who are knuckleheads.
Well, I mean, the competition, you had Slugs Kelly, you had Gilligan Lopez, you had, there was some talent at the RAG. I mean, lots of guys.
You had Slider, you had
Opie Spencer. These guys are all CAGs and stuff now, and former squadron CEOs. So I mean, there was a big talent pool for Slammer to choose from for sure.
Yeah, and that's not only that, most of us were coming back from multiple wars, multiple combat zones. Sure. So I mean, that was probably the first time in a RAG in a long time that we had that quality, that caliber of instructors. Not to say that our instructors for us were no less than that, but it's just amazing timing for all of us.
Yeah, everybody's showing up at the RAG with the fruit salad on the chest that's got the it's either the Desert Fox or the Kosovo gift pack, right? I mean, everybody's done that. So awesome. So once you guys got picked, you started doing the practice. Talk us through that. How did you train? How'd you get started?
I think there's something we need to cover first, and that's after you get picked, you have to have the conversation with the previous team, some team members, to talk about what's really going on. You look back at Willow Grove, you look back at the accidents that we've had in the aircraft, and you realize that this is not a joke. This is serious business, right? It's unforgiving. And going a little bit further, or foreshadowing a little bit, when you look back at time, most of the people I know who've died in fighter aviation died in air show accidents, not combat. And that's and that's something I think all of us share, is either airshow practices or demos. We've seen it with the Blues. We've seen it all around us. But it is a serious conversation where they sit you down and say, this is where you're going to die. I mean, if this happens in the aircraft. So you accept that risk, and you move on, which actually brings us to a high-performing organization, why we're looked at as one of the highest performing organizations in the world. Shorn, any thoughts on that?
No, you nailed it, Ponch. And I remember when we sat down, it was Demo and Mango and Sean Mango, and Demo Castillo. And those guys were telling us this is a serious business. And, this was really my first dose of humility as, we got announced that we got it. And, you're on this high, like, wow, that's awesome. I can't wait. This is going to be a great year. And then you sit down and you talk about the history, and Dewar and Fur Bergstrom. And that could happen to anybody. I have never armchair quarterbacked any of these mishaps, because I've scared myself enough that any one of those could have been any one of us. And when they sit there and they tell you about the seriousness and the level of intensity and professionalism they have to do during the demo, because you are low and there is really no time to make decisions. You have to be right on. And it was amazing. It was a great talk, and it really caged us, I think, for the training syllabus.
And that was just you guys in the previous year's demo team. There was no adult supervision in the room. Skipper wasn't there. It was just lieutenant to lieutenant. Is that right?
It was, yeah. And
Yeah.
then after we trained with those guys as well, and then once we had gone through a syllabus and they were spotting, and we started high at like 5,000 feet, and then we started stepping it down. It's actually incredibly similar to what the Blues do. It's a very cookbook kind of slow process. You take baby steps, walk, crawl, run. But after we finally were ready to do one at the field, that's when Slammer Richardson and the Commodore, I believe, stood there, and they were listening on the radio and they were watching us, and they signed us off that we were cleared to proceed to the air show circuit. But
so your initial practices, you said at the field, your initial practices were not at Naval Air Station Oceana. Where did you practice?
Dare County, remember that, Ponch?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a swamp. It's a swamp down in North Carolina.
So you're down there. You're over the target rate. It's a big old swampland with a couple of targets and snakes.
Yeah. And when you go down there with the new pilots, so I had to stay back and I was instructor when Shorn took off. What ended up happening is you have to hot pit. So I'm hot pitting going down there with the Opie and Rocco. And it's another level of coaching and training that you have to do, because when Mango was training me to be a Rio, I did some work with him first, and then I worked with Shorn and Stick for the year, and then I had to go back and train the next year's group. And we go down to Dare, and that is absolutely terrifying to do that type of work, that type of training and coaching as a Rio instructor demo team member, right?
So you're talking about the next year when you're teaching the next folks, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But going down to Dare is where we step things down, and that's probably where we have the most near-death experiences.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So you go down to Dare because there's nobody down there. So the point being that you're one, not flying over people's houses. You're not making a lot of noise. You're not impacting the pattern. And if you make a big giant smoking hole, you're probably only killing yourself and nobody else. Is that a fair assumption of why you do it there?
Pretty much the story of all the Navy ranges.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. And so you started with basically a hard deck of 5,000 feet. So you simulate the ground is at 5 and you would do the whole thing at 5. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I think that's, I'm trying to remember the specific details, but I believe 5,000 was the initial deck that we used. Yeah. And, you'd be surprised how, even when 5,000 is a huge cushion, how conservative you are as you bottom out on a loop or something and you're at 6,300 and, and demo in the back seat goes, "Hey, that was a great loop, Shorn. Nobody saw it." And, so it's, you're like, you're 1,300 feet above people. That's like pattern altitude. And it's like, but so you really, even though you have that cushion, and it's built it's designed that way so that there is, to mitigate the risk, to do the operational risk management. What's the least, we're willing to accept some risk, but not enough that we're going to put people in danger. And you just keep until you get better and better and better. And this is exactly what the Blues do. You start stepping those altitudes down and bringing the crossings in and things like that, to the point where once you've done something 1,000 times, you're good at it. You can teach. That's why I tell people, you can teach a monkey to fly these planes. If they do it 1,000 times, they're going to get good at it. If they send a monkey to space, he did it. So we're not special pilots. It's just that you practice and you are disciplined about it, and you you work. It's a lot of work to get to the point where you get qualified.
Yeah, it's we talk about being proficient versus legal or qualified, right? And there's a big difference, and that's all comes from practice. Nobody can teach you proficiency. You have to go out and do it yourself, right? So so now once you get all practiced up, you start at 5,000 feet over Dare, you work it all the way down to basically the deck at Dare, and then you go to Oceana, you perform in front of the skipper and the Commodore. Is that all the way down at the deck, like right screaming over people's houses on that sign off, or is it lifted up a little bit?
I think we had a 500-foot shore deck first, right, Shorn? And then we brought it down.
And we might have done it at Dare, even Dare County, maybe, but I can't remember. Because it's a big deal to A, close the airfields, and B, you have to do a 5-mile ring, up to 10,000 feet, and get that airspace blocked off by the FAA as well. So TFRs are in effect and things like that, just to do a practice. So it's a big deal, and it takes a lot of coordination.
And not to mention, you got all the people who live around an airfield who really, they really like you guys, but they don't want to hear you on a random Tuesday when the kids are sleeping, right?
I would say maybe 50.1% like it, and the other 49.9 are calling the base and complaining. It honestly depends, show site to show site, I would say, Ponch, because you go to some some places that you might least expect, being incredibly patriotic, and 99% of the population is there in support. Other places where you think you're going to have a great show, there's people picketing and asking the
Wow.
tough questions. Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow. Okay.
Well, the toughest question I ever got asked in an interview was in San Francisco during Fleet Week. And it was live, and this reporter asked me, how can you justify, it was a great interview up to this point, and then she threw in this question live, how can you justify spending this kind of money and wasting all this time and assets for air shows when we have people on the front lines that don't have the equipment they need to fight the wars? And it's like, well, honestly, have you ever heard the phrase that there's separate pots of money? This is a pot of money that is designed for recruiting. This is how we inspire the follow-on, folks that are gonna carry the torch when we have to rotate out, and we need people that are willing to fight, and that's what our job is. And there are other pots of money that are designated to give people the equipment they need to fight. And I essentially said, really, this is the kind of stuff that Congress and our senators need to hear about, from you're voting for them, and they're the ones that are telling us what we can spend and where we're going to spend it. So I am just doing my job and following orders.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great answer that is. Was that when you were flying Tomcats or with the Blues when you got that one?
No, that was with the Blues, but boy, would that have been a great show to do in the Tomcat between the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate. I might not be still flying if I did that one. In the
Awesome. All right. Well, let's see here. So we're talking about practicing. Now, as you let's say you're going off in that San Francisco show, you do a practice at Oceana before you fly off, right? Is that like on a Thursday or something like that? And then you fly off on Friday. Is that about right? Mm-hmm. So you do a practice here, and then you go off and you're on the road. You didn't do San Francisco, you said, in the Tomcat. Pick one that you guys did. Walk me through the process. There was a practice at home. There was a fly-in, probably a practice on site. What happens during the show? Things like that.
What do you think, Ponch? The most interesting one I would say was Patrick. You remember how I think we were supposed to go to McGee Tyson, and Iraqi Freedom kicked off, and it canceled every air show. But Patrick said, we are going to do our air show. Blues are invited. Thunderbirds are invited. Snowbirds are invited. We had the F-14, 15, 16, A-10, F-18. It was probably the biggest air show I've ever been at as far as firepower. And that was quite the process, though, to make that happen.
But we have a morning brief that we go to with the FAA, with the other demonstrators. That's a big thing. But at Patrick, if I remember correctly, I wasn't really aware that we were flying a beach show on it. Was it Friday night?
I don't think anybody was aware until the Good Idea Ferry came out and said, hey, who does a night demo? Why don't you guys go out and fly?
Yeah, but we did a full-up. It was a twilight demo, which was mind-blowing. Because everybody was there except us. We were flying, right?
We were the only flying act, and all the other teams were at the O Club on the beach watching.
Oh, how fun is that?
Well, in hindsight, it was great. It was terrifying when we did it.
So basically, it's a twilight show, which maybe you haven't practiced as much, and you're not only performing for the crowd, but you're performing for all the other demo pilots in the Navy and the Air Force. And if I'm not mistaken, you were rushing the Blues at the time, and they were there watching you. Is that about right?
That was.
So now, if I'm not mistaken, there was do you want to talk about? I think you had a conversation with Lonnie Anderson after the show.
Yeah, Lonnie, Brigadier General Lonnie Anderson, right now.
Oh yes, That's right. That's right. FedEx pilot, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
That's correct. Yep, and actor.
Oh yes, he is in. Golly, I feel like I've seen
Captain
him
Phillips. Yeah, Captain Phillips.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, when he plays an Air Force pilot, doesn't he?
Yep, he's an F-16 guy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's right. Lonnie, if you're listening to this, call me. All right. Keep going.
No, Lonnie's a great American. I think, Ponch, they told us, remember we went to the initial brief for the Friday show, and like Ponch was saying, the FAA brief in the morning, and they tell us, the airspace restrictions and the timing of it and the itinerary, all that stuff. Special rules, special radio frequencies. But then they kind of came out with that, hey, we'd really love somebody to fly this evening. And everybody just kind of takes a look at each other and going, no way, we're not allowed to do that. We're not qualified. And Ponch and I are like, well, we'll call our commanding officer. We'll do it. But it wasn't technically a twilight. I mean, it wasn't a night show and it wasn't a day show.
Right.
And they didn't have the whole airspace, but they had enough of it that we did a portion of our maneuvers. But I think the most, impressive one was that takeoff. Remember, they had to close the road both directions at the end of the runway for our low transition to the beach line.
Oh,
Because
wow.
we crossed right over, I think that's US 1 maybe.
Yeah.
And so as I'm coming off the runway, I'll never forget, Ponch goes, "Is that a fence?" So we go by the end of the road. And, we were probably, I don't know how many feet. Red out was going off. I know that. And then we went by this fence line, and then we had to bank it, almost 80-degree bank to pull up the beach. And that's what Lonnie saw. And he just saw this plan form of an F-14 go across the road, essentially like this, up the beach line, and then started our show. And when we finished, we went over to the O Club in our flight suits, and we were all hot and sweaty. And I remember Lonnie walked up to me and he said, "Man, what altitudes were you crossing that road?" And I said, "I don't think our HUD camera was working."
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That was cool. So what year was that? That was at Patrick. What year was that? If anybody was there.
03.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe March or April of 03.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, that's so cool. So now after so that was like a twilight show. What about a normal show? Normally you fly in like on a Thursday or Friday, and then you have a practice, and there might be a Friday afternoon show, but then there's a Saturday, Sunday. Is that about the normal sequence? How does that work?
Yeah, we finally get paired up with each other after we do a couple shows with Mango, and Shorn's flying with Demo or Money, somebody else. But finally we get paired up, and I think I can't remember which our first show together was, Shorn, but I remember it may have been, but we did another show in the Midwest somewhere where we get airborne. We have a ceiling. We roll inverted, and I hear Shorn ask, "Where's the field?" I'm like, "I don't know." We weren't in the clouds. We were just lower to the ground and inverted more than we've ever been in the past. But those type of things sneak up on you every now and then. And I mean, again, going back to our humble beginnings, we're a couple of knuckleheads, and you're asking us to do something that's pretty spectacular. And you throw us in a situation we haven't been in before, which is, hey, let's do a lower show today. That first maneuver was hysterical. And my response to Shorn was, fly to the dot. That's like, I can't see there.
Ponch gave me the dot. I was just saying, we weren't in the clouds, but we had to do everything lower than we were used to. And that's where people get in trouble in these air shows. That's with one of the Blues mishaps. It was not resetting an altimeter, so that to Barrows, so that you have the same as your rad alt, when you're inverted and things like that. So you got to reset. But when you're used to flying up to 4,000 feet inverted and pulling straight back to the field, you can't do that anymore. When you level off at 1,500 or 1,200,
sure,
and it just becomes a geometry problem, and that's where Ponch and Disco and Demo and Money Halter and guys like that. That's where those guys save our lives. Essentially, they keep us alive, and because they have way more SA at that point. Yeah, their situation awareness is elevated over ours. We're just looking through a soda straw.
Yeah. So Crunch, if I'm hearing you right, you kind of want us to walk you through a typical day where we wake up, go to the FAA brief, and do everything.
Well, only because I think that the briefing part is pretty cool. I would like to hear how that works, and then afterwards, I was wondering if you could walk me through a show.
Yeah, sure. So morning brief with the FAA. We send one member to the brief. It could be any one of us, including the non-flying members of the day. We get everything that Shorn went through. If we're on site, if it's going to be an on-site show, that's a little bit different. We'll get there a little bit earlier and prep up. If it's off-site, that's different as well. But a lot of times when we were, our time slot in the afternoon was awesome. It was usually right before the Thunderbirds, right before the Blue Angels.
Right.
And with that, we're staying in the same hotel with them. The briefs are usually in the hotel in the morning. We could potentially join their escorts to get to the air show. So there's a lot of times we didn't spend a lot of our morning at the air show itself. The other team members would be there in the morning, standing around the jets, or we'd send other air crew there to do that. We get to the air show, take a look at the aircraft, get in the car, the rental car, and that's where we run our briefs. And our briefs are pretty standard. There's a lot of things to discuss there. But realizing on that day, the day before the actual demo on a Saturday or Sunday, on that Friday or even on a Thursday, we're going to fly another practice there as well, so we can see what landmarks are around us. So we're kind of familiar with what's the landmarks as well. But the brief, standard Top Gun brief, a lot of human factors. Make sure we had enough sleep, those type of things. Make sure we're feeling good, checking in with each other, health condition, all that. And then we get into the technical aspect about the maneuvers, and that's where Shorn would usually walk me through that and say, "Hey, this is what I need you to pay attention to here. Back me up on this." So, Shorn, do you want to add more color to that?
No, I mean you're right on. One part you forgot about talking about the briefs, the FAA briefs, was having Snort Snodgrass in there, and Patty Wagstaff's dog walking around our feet. You remember that? And we're like, "What? You looked down, what? There's an animal in here." No, yeah. Usually for us, part of our pre-flight, the Blues, they get imagery of all these show sites. Guys like Ponch and I and Stick and Disco, we had to kind of make our own way and use what everybody else uses. So we didn't have access to the same stuff. But we'd look at where were our towers, and where were the things that we were going to need to avoid. What was going to be somewhere in our show routine that was going to have to change something. Like, is there a building sticking up on one of our run-in lines? Is there things like that? Is it hard to see the runways? Remember that show, Ponch, we did? It was Muskegon. It was the worst show of my life. And I was flying with Roll, who was awesome. Roll had absolutely nothing to do with this. This was all me. But the run-in line, like the runway was the 500-foot line, and they had taken lime and lined it out another 500 feet or 1,000 feet outside of that for the 1,500-foot line. And when you're doing anything dynamic, you're supposed to be at that far line, 1,500 feet from the crowd. They don't want the aircraft pointing at people. You're always on a 45-degree run-in, pointing on one side of the crowd. You never point at the crowd. And I couldn't see that line from the air. I could see it great. When you look at it on the ground, it's a bunch of lime and like white bags and things that they had lined out. But once you got airborne, you couldn't see it with the tree line and everything else. And so I kept biting off on the runway. And things like that, discussing what is going to bite us today, what's going to be different. Because if everything's the same, it's great. You can go with the standard brief, but when things get different, it just it changes everything. It really does. It just gets in your head.
So talk us through that typical. So you're getting ready to go on a flight like the Muskegon show. All right. So you get to the hold short. Hey, Tomcat demo, clear for takeoff. Talk us through it. How does that go?
That's Ponch's call.
All right. Ponch, talk us through it.
We take the runway. We get the airspace from the boss, make sure it's good to go for us. And then we get the aircraft configured right, wings out, flaps down, ready for our load training. I think, did we go flaps down on takeoff? I can't remember.
We were
probably maneuvering flaps.
Maneuvering
flaps, exactly.
And then we just start after they give us the green light. Narration would start. We get airborne really, really quick, get up to 140 knots, get off the ground, make sure we get positive rate of climb. And this is where Shorn scares the hell out of me.
I'll tell you, the low tranny, I started getting pretty, I would say, salty, confident on those things until the Memphis show when Snort Snodgrass, who is a legend in the F-14 demo, came up to me after ours and said, "That's the lowest low tranny I've ever seen." And at that point, I said, "I need to step it up because if I impressed Snort, I probably just about killed us." Because you just get comfortable at doing it and you feel the jet. I remember, Ponch, we'd get the gear, you'd have to lift the jet off the ground to get the decompression, and then you'd slowly set it back down, and then somewhere around 180 or so, you'd feel the jet kind of, you just feel this little back end would sink just a little bit, and that was as the maneuvering flaps came up, and then it was super comfortable because you knew it was nice and smooth and you're good. And we had some really good ones, Ponch. Remember the Cleveland? Low tranny. I think we blew a bunch of sailboats around and made a huge mist cloud as we pulled straight up over the water.
But the comm in the aircraft at this point is we're accelerating 160, 180, 200, and we're just holding down, staying it low on the deck. And then Shorn would give the call out, "Hold on, Uncle Jesse." And that's when I knew we were popping.
That was That was my cue to him that he's at
Yeah.
the G on set.
Here comes the D.
Oh, hold on, Uncle Jesse. Oh, wow. So
And that's not from Full House, by the way. For you
Yeah,
young
exactly.
ones out there. Not
That's what
Full
people
House.
think now. When I say hang on, Uncle Jesse, they say, "What? Oh, yeah, from Full House." I'm like, "What is that? I don't know what that is."
Wrong, Uncle Jesse.
So boom, you're of course Dukes of Hazzard, right? Yeah. So yeah, you get to the end of the runway, you yank the nose up, and up you go, right? What happens? What's the net follow-on maneuver?
It's usually so we try to go straight up, depending airspeed and airspace and clouds and things like that. And then what I would do is I would rotate 90 degrees to the right so that I was now facing essentially away from the crowd, and then we'd make the top half of that Immelman. And I would hold. I know Ponch remembers this. I would hold inverted as long as I could till we hit our NATOPS limitations for the fuel pumps.
10 seconds.
And then 10
20
seconds, exactly.
10 seconds. 10 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would still stay inverted and head outbound like that, just because I thought people, that would look impressive that more so than just rolling upright and heading outbound.
It's very uncomfortable. Just
Yeah.
that out.
But Ponch could see the airfield.
It's surprisingly difficult to fly straight and level inverted.
Mhm.
It is surprisingly difficult. Yes.
Well, everything's
Continue.
backwards. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
It's
Yeah.
very difficult. But then from there, we would do a slicing turn. Let's see, if we're inverted, it would be to our left, back towards center point. And at that point, that was where you really, Stick was really good at this as well. You just had to look at your altimeter, and you had to look at how far you were from the field, because 10 seconds, depending on wind, depending on how quickly you rolled, things like that, you may or may not have been able to go 70 degrees nose low, 80 degrees nose low. Sometimes it was 40 degrees nose low because you had to scoop out at 200 feet. We had a 200-foot letter, whereas some of the Air Force demos were 500 foot. And I think the Hornets might have been too, Ponch, right?
Yeah.
Yep. The West Coast Commodore owned the F-14 demo program. The Oceana Commodore owned the Tomcat, and the Oceana Commodore was willing to do the 200 feet, whereas the West Coast Commodore at the time would only let them do 500, which makes for a much more impressive show,
right?
Just being that low. But so as we came back into the center point there, is that when we did the min radius turn, Ponch?
Min radius turns, yep,
Yeah.
with burners lit. Yep.
Yeah, so Crunch, I know you wanted some details, some actual flying details. This was my favorite maneuver in the F-14 because when you first start that maneuver and you learn how to fly it, you get fast, because the F-14B and D engines, those things at sea level were putting out 30,600 pounds of thrust apiece, and you're in a 54 to 60,000 pound jet. So I mean, it was hard not to accelerate. But as I continued to do that maneuver, I got the feel to break the AOA, and I would pull it to 20 units instead of our normal AOA on speed of what we were doing, 14 to 16 type thing. Mm-hmm. And because if you stayed at 15 units, you would start to arc and speed up, and guys would have to come out of afterburner. Like the previous crews would come out of afterburner, or they go to min afterburner and try to pull a little more, but we had to worry about over-G'ing at that point. So as we'd start the maneuver, I would pull through to the back side of the L over D curve, lift over drag. So now you're essentially skidding around. And if I did that, I could leave it in full afterburner. I could maintain about 325 knots, and I could use my pull to control my airspeed. And I never overstressed doing that. Nice. And then I had to use my rudders to keep us on altitude, because if you move your wings, if you use your wings, you look like crap, because you see the plane just going back and forth like this. So you had to hold what you got and use your rudders to kind of keep yourself on altitude at 18 to 20 units, holding that so I could keep my airspeed under control. And it was just a really different way of flying than I'd ever done. And that actually helped me a ton on the Blues, being able to do stuff like that. And you're flying like a helicopter pilot at that point. You're actually using your feet, which, jet guys, our feet are on the deck, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So talking about rudder usage, and from an instructor standpoint, instructing the new team members, it was weird because we never talked about that when we're flying the jet in the Tomcat community. But from the demo, we learned how to use the rudders. I think more so than we did in what we were doing on the tactical side of aviation. But we really learned how to fly that aircraft, and that thing is a beast down low, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was the funnest plane Funnest plane I've ever flown in a demo, I think, because you're your own boss, and you're it. It's, you don't have the coordination of a bunch of other things going on. It just really gave you the artistic freedom to just, impress, have a blast, and do your job well.
That's awesome. That is so cool. That's cool. So boom, you pop up, you do this Immelman 90 degrees off, you do a slicing turn, you come down mid radius turn, you're cranking that thing around. Then what?
Oh boy, Ponch, you got your sequence out?
I mean, just generally. I mean, you do
a nice extension to a vertical back in. I think they were doing the Cuban 8 here, inverted. I can't remember which came up next.
Yep, I think that's what we did next.
Yeah, so it was coming back to show center, extending out a little bit, going up in the vertical, coming back, and I think our first hit is 45 degrees nose low. Is that correct, Shorn?
Yeah.
Yeah, 45 degrees nose low, inverted in our roll point at altitude. I can't remember, 2,500 feet. I can't remember the numbers. But that 45 degrees looking down at Earth inverted is not a lot of fun. But on the back end of this, we extend again, and we do it at 60 degrees nose low.
Yep.
And that's absolutely terrifying. I don't know no demo pilot I knew like to hold that position at all. They touch 60 and they roll. They're like, I'm done. We're rolling. Yeah.
I can imagine just hearing you guys talk about this. I'm like, man, it's a lot, because I know. Well, it doesn't. I've never done the demo team thing, but just watching you guys do it, I have nothing but respect, because I tell you what, it takes some some nuts, to put it bluntly, to do what we're doing here. Yeah.
Now get this: you flew the F-14B quite a bit, Crunch, and when we got the VDIG in it, we got the new HUD. We started training in that a little bit more, and with the next year's team, I ended up going out and learning a little bit about the B HUD that I didn't know. And what we found out and discovered on a demo practice is when you go in inverted, roll inverted, or coming down the ground, pulling through 6 degrees, nose low, inverted, that HUD is actually lagging. So it's showing 40, 45 degrees, and we're actually hitting 60, right? So we ended up pulling through to 70, 80 and actually exiting out the other direction.
Whoa.
So that was an absolutely terrifying moment to realize in the jet that the VDIG, the HUD and the B lags a little bit when you do that. So we're like, let's get back to steam gauges and the B, right? The
wow.
D was fine.
I'd never heard that about the VDIG-R. I knew that there were some different issues with the way it displayed things with the horizon and all that, but
But you think about it, who's going to go fly that thing inverted to check it out at 60 degrees nose low at 2,500 feet, right? Nobody's going to do that.
It's not a thing that you're typically going to be doing. You're absolutely right.
Well, and you were under negative, just about 1G when you're doing it too. It was real uncomfortable. And now you just sparked a brain cell that I thought I'd killed drinking, Ponch. I think as we came in from the low tranny outbound, we did the half Cuban 8 first, but not the MRT. Okay. I think we came back and did the min radius turn, because that half Cuban 8 is where I got in big trouble in Muskegon. Yeah. Not the half Cuban 8. I'm sorry, the racetrack 8 that we did. Where we did
you're right.
Turns.
Yeah. So okay. So we've alluded to it twice. What happened in Muskegon? 99 on guard. Hey, Crunch here. Hey, I just want a little something here on the side. We keep track of our expenses, as you know, and once again, we find ourselves running at a deficit. Now, we had a pledge drive several months ago that raised more than $2,000, and we greatly appreciate that. And we need to do that again. So with your help, we will get out of the hole and get to the finish line in good shape.
As with the previous effort, if you'd like to support us, go to fighterpilotpodcast.com and scroll down to where it says Help Keep Us in the Air and click on Make a Donation. When you donate, you'll have the chance to add a message. Please write F-14 Tomcast. You can use PayPal, a credit card, or a debit card to make a donation.
And for anybody who contributes $5 or more, we will list your name in the credits of a future episode. And for those who donate $100 or more, we'll send you a beautiful 11x14 photo of an F-14 with our signatures. Just be sure to leave your address in the message. In addition, in the next 2 weeks, we'll select the two top donors, and each one will have a 30-minute phone call or video chat with either a bio or me. So we'll contact you and arrange that time in 2 weeks. So that's for the top two donors.
We hope you found value in these episodes and will help us keep going. We've got some great episodes ahead.
Now, hey, let's switch gears. As we plan our final episode, we're curious about a few things. So we've put together an audience poll. Now, we didn't launch it yet. We just wanted to give you a heads up that it's coming. Now, Bio, how can our audience participate?
When it's ready, we'll post it in social media accounts for the Fighter Pilot Podcast and Air Combat Experience. The survey we're using has a limited lifespan, so we're going to wait a few weeks until we launch it. Then you'll be able to just click on the link and submit your opinions. It'll be about 5 questions and take about 2 minutes.
And unlike a boldface exam, there are no wrong answers. So watch our social media accounts in early July. Now let's get back to the episode. What happened to Muskegon?
Well, so it's, we've talked about it.
Shorn was not flying with Ponch.
No, but Roll did his best to keep me out of trouble. So the weird thing about Muskegon, so normally you take off parallel to the crowd and you go straight up and you turn away from the crowd, right? So this one, the takeoff runway was right towards center line. So you had to taxi 6,500 feet away, and you're lined up at the crowd. And so I do the low train, and I have to pull up early because you can't go over the crowd. So I pull up early, and so now I'm slower than I normally am. And instead I do a pure Immelman. I don't have to roll or anything. And I'm going away from the crowd after going right towards them. And so as I turned to do my normal slicing turn back towards point, that first essentially lazy 8 that we do on the ground, I went right over the crowd on the first turn. And then as I came back around, I tried to arc it because I'm like, oh man, we're too close. And Roll's like, hey man, move it out. And so the second one, I still went over the crowd in full afterburner, and the crowd loved it. I don't know if they could hear to this day after that, but and so then the next maneuver we came in for that split S thing, or I guess it was a half cube, and I was lined up on the 500-foot line again because I could see the runway, I couldn't see the line, and so couple all this with, so I'm screwing up and looking at the wrong thing, and I'm close to the crowd. So that's part A. Part B, there were 50-mile-an-hour winds in from the lake towards the show line at the same time. So even if I would have been doing it right, I still would have been close to the crowd. So now it's even worse. And now part C, the FAA inspector that's doing this air show, it's his first one. So he's like, he knows the rules, but he's not really in the scene or knows like how to handle when things aren't going the way he wants them to go. And so we got the call, I think, after 5 maneuvers, and Disco was down there. Disco and Stick were the second crew, and Disco was doing the narration, and we got a call on the radio, hey, they want you to land after 4 or 5 maneuvers. And the Blues are there watching, and I was a finalist already, so I'd been picked to be a finalist. Actually, no, I wasn't. I hadn't been picked to be a finalist, so I thought there's no way in hell I'll be a finalist now, because this was maybe a week before I went to finalist week for the Blues. Yeah. So yeah, I knew I was a finalist, but I hadn't gone to finalist week, and then I got benched by the FAA in 5 maneuvers in.
Wow!
And so we land, and Sean D. Tucker, who awesome dude to this day. I've run into him several times in the past few years. He went to the FAA guy, and he had gone out and flown as well, and he said those are the worst winds I've ever seen at an air show site. They were pushing me in. It's going to be hard for everybody today. We'll recage everybody, and we'll talk about it in the debrief. And he essentially greased the skids with the FAA guy. Said, okay, fine, we'll try it again tomorrow. But at that point, I said, you know what? I'm not flying anymore. Stick, it's all yours. Because Stick was going to fly the next day anyway.
Yeah.
But I gave him Sunday as well, and said, I think I'd pretty much have proven that I don't need to be airborne at the rest of the show. So me and Roll were the narrators, and that was my first question in my Blues interview was, so what happened to Muskegon?
There's some humility in here, because one thing about this is in this high performing organization, we can call ourselves out and just stop. And this happened to us again. When Shorn went to the Blues, I was flying with Crash Miles down in San Antonio. And just a week before in Idaho, the Thunderbirds just put a bird in the ground. One of the soloists, he ejected, he's fine. But word in the brief, in the morning brief, was FAA is concerned. We got these cowboys out here, and you think about the Tomcat demo, a 200-foot show with an aircraft that's twice the size of an F-16 down in San Antonio. The heat's going to come on us, and we sensed that. Snort gave us a little heads up, and so did everybody else in the morning brief. And Crash and I looked at each other, and I'm like, man, this is not a good idea to go fly today. They want somebody. I mean, they want to make an example out of somebody. Let's not be that example, right? Let's call it a day, and we did. So what's amazing about being on a team like this is, I mean, we'll call knock it off before and be okay about it, right? Because there are lives at stake, and it's a very dangerous business that we already covered. But that's the great thing about being part of a team like this and work with guys like Shorn is you can call yourself out and say, no, we're not doing this.
It's Ponch. It's an interesting thing you bring up. I know this is kind of like your business and everything to talk about high performing organizations, but there's a saying. It's something along the lines of when an organization stops accepting criticism is when it starts to fail, or something along those lines, right? And I think it's fair to say that you two guys and pretty much everybody who does that demo process team, you are open to criticism. You're going to make mistakes. I don't think any one of us has ever flown the perfect flight, right? I'm still trying. I usually can't get to the hold short before I've not today. Not a perfect flight today for sure. But you're always in search of that perfect flight. You're always trying, and you're never to the point where you can say, I don't need to improve anymore. Ever.
Right.
And go ahead.
But in your line of work, both your lines of work, you have threat and error management, right? 7 times during any flight, you're going to have a mistake, but it's going to be trapped. You're going to trap that. And that's what we did as an air crew is we would trap each other's mistakes, keep them in there, keep us honest. And when they do escape, we do have to do something. And that's where the debrief came in, and we learned from that. And a lot of times we got lucky, right? So there are critical lessons to be learned from flying air shows. Right?
It's Ponch. It's funny. It's a lot of times all three of us have used the word luck or lucky. And I'm going to unpopular opinion. I don't think there's as much luck there so much as, hey, it is that feedback loop. It is that ability to self-critique. It is the ability to say, hey, the winds are kicking my ass and I can't see that line, the 1,500 foot line. And you know what? I got landed and, my decision was stick, you take the lead. I obviously am off my game today. Boom, you got it. And I'm sure that when you were rushing the blues and they said, hey, what happened to Muskegon? Had you said, well, the wind blew me, wasn't my fault. Boom, you weren't making the team. But you owned it. And, Jocko talks about extreme ownership and all that other stuff. I mean, we have all been thinking about that for the last 20, 30 years, extreme ownership. That's how we got to where we are. And so that's just the way we live. And so you did that. You came up, you said, hey, I messed up and look at all these things I did. And I knew to take myself out. And they were like, that's the maturity that we want.
Well, that's exactly after the fact. I think that's why I made the team because Beef Bartlett, was the boss at the time, and he kicks off the interview with, hey, no kidding. He said, my normal question is, why do you want to be a Blue Angel? What do you bring to the team? But for you, what happened in Muskegon and what do we need to know about Shorn and the FAA? That was my first question. And so, you're sitting at the end of a long table with all 16 Blues officers in there. And no kidding, the first thing I did was I went, serenity now. And they all started laughing. And then, no kidding, I just told the truth. I said, boy, I was off my game that morning. I started the maneuvers out from a completely different perspective or spot that I normally do on the airfield, and I never recovered from that. And it was spiraling to the point where it was smarter for me to land the plane and call it a day than it was to continue to try to make it work. I just needed to, essentially, cut my losses at that point. And I said, and I'll tell you, the hardest part about it was I disappointed Roll, because Roll is a fantastic Rio. John Kaiser, he's a United pilot now. And I said, in the other demo team, I go, those guys were the ones standing in front of the crowd. I got to land and be out of the crowd sight. I said, but after that, I went right to the tent, and Roll went with me, and we sat down and we talked to kids and we signed autographs and we answered questions. And when people said, what happened? I said, yeah, today was not my day. And man, that was humbling. It was awful.
So people in the crowd knew that it wasn't going well? Did they figure that out?
They said, what happened to the plane? Was something wrong with your plane? Yeah, they thought, what happened? Did the plane break? Because I think that might be what Disco said to the crowd is, hey, we're having a mechanical issue and the plane's going to land early. And I just said today was not my day. Maybe people took it as, oh yeah, well, the plane was broken, but in reality it was, that was not my day to fly. And
right.
Yeah, awful experience. And then I went down to finalist week. I had honestly zero stress at that point going down to finalist week because I knew I didn't have a chance. So it made it so easy to go there going, well, I can't believe they're still letting me come down after that, a week before. But then the guys that are there that you're finalists with, I mean, these guys are rock stars. When you get to the Blues finalists, I was like, what am I doing here?
Right.
I mean, you got Knuckles Shipley, Brigadier General.
Mm-hmm.
You got Pewok Shortle, who's an 06. You got, what was his name? All these guys, Ponch too. Ferg Ferguson. I mean, guys like that. Proton McLaughlin. I mean,
I know 3 of those 4 guys. Yeah.
These guys are legends. They're all awesome guys, fantastic people. And you go down there, Steph Mueller, who ended up being on the team with me, and I'm going, what? These guys are a different league. And I knew that I also had just screwed away my career in that demo. So best case, I was going to get to be a rag instructor for the next 2.5 years or year and a half at that point, and then go back to the fleet. So there was I had zero stress at that point just because I knew it was over. And it was the most surprising call I think I could have ever gotten when they called and said, welcome to the team, asshole. And I'm like, you guys know you're calling Shorn, right? Like, did you dial the wrong number? And,
it's the wrong John. They just called John, and they're like, shoot, the wrong one.
Damn it, who transposed these numbers here? Hey, sorry, man. Just kidding. We'll see you. Thanks for coming out.
Oh, man. Holy cow. So wow. So this conversation went in a completely different direction. This is amazing.
Sorry, man.
No, this is amazing. This is great because I tell you what, this is exactly what this whole community is about. I know the podcast is about the F-14, but in the end, it's that extreme sense of, well, Jocko said extreme ownership, but that ability to debrief and take on your mistakes and improve, that really is impressive. And something else that you guys had mentioned several times, Shorn, you had mentioned how much the Rio really saves your bacon, saves your lives, I believe is what you had said.
Absolutely.
And in the aviation, in the airline industry, Part 121 world, we talk about pilot flying and pilot monitoring. And if you look at that threat and error management model that Ponch referred to, you'll hear, that pilot monitoring, for those who don't know airline world, the pilot flying is the guy who's got the stick in the rudder, and the pilot monitoring is the other one. He's moving the gear handle, the flap handle, making all the radio calls, but most importantly, taking in the big picture. And according to safety statistics I've heard, that pilot monitoring catches or traps 60 to 70% of the errors. It's
I'd agree with that.
The numbers I've heard. And in the world of the Tomcat demo, that's the Rio is the pilot monitoring. So the Rio is the one catching 60 to 70% of the errors, which is absolutely amazing. And it probably is a testament to how good the Tomcat demo always was. You compare it, there are some great demo teams out there, 100%, but the Tomcat demo was always amazing. And it's probably because you got the 2 people in there and you're able to, I don't want to say push it, but push it just a little bit because you've got an extra layer, an extra error management, threat management in there with having that pilot monitoring.
An extra filter.
There's so many things in there. The mutual support, the hive mind that goes into it, the task interdependence inside the aircraft. But in the demo, when I'm looking out at the wings to see if the slats are moving, that's an important call because he needs to know that. If the flaps are moving, if the wings are moving, those things need to be called out because, you get different systems that record off of different parts of the aircraft. I need to be looking at the opposite opposite wing to say, I see it rolling out there. Calling out air speeds and things like that are important, but it's not what you're saying; it's how you say it too. The intonation of your voice. You don't want to get too excited. You want to be a bitch and Betty in there, but it's just giving them calls and kind of being a psychologist is the way I look at it.
Well, you like flying with Ponch was so easy because he could read me. And he knew when he needed to say something and when he didn't, and he knew whether it needed to be funny or not too. So like if things were, if I was off my game a little bit, Ponch would come with some witty little dart at me and make me laugh, and then things were better, and he knew not to say something if I had it suitcased. If I was on a maneuver and he was comfortable and everything looked right, he just wouldn't say anything, and I knew things were okay. But if I heard him, I knew something was off. And we had that kind of crew coordination. It was so easy flying with him. And I flew with Disco just a little bit. But, he's just as talented. And I know that he and Stick had the same kind of crew coordination going on, in their plane. But, Crunch, one of the interesting things as we talk here about owning up to errors and recognizing them. It's what scares me is when I meet the people who don't think they make errors or think they have had the perfect flight. Those are the people I don't really like flying with, because they're, if you're not constantly criticizing yourself to make yourself better, you've reached a point where you need to completely recage, especially in a business that's as unforgiving as aviation, where you can't just pull over and stop the car. Somebody's got to land, like a guy that has no air experience at all down in Fort Lauderdale after his pilot becomes incapacitated. I mean, that's an amazing story to me. How the FAA controllers talked that guy into landing a plane, and he'd never flown an airplane before in his life, and he safely landed it. That's amazing to me.
Absolutely amazing. And you see that video, you're like, he did a dang good job.
That's right. That guy needs to go to Navy flight school right now.
That's right.
I'm 100% on board. We'd get into these air wings with single seat Hornet squadrons, and being a 2-seat squadron, that air wing, they would try to pick on our backseaters, and boy, man, we would go to bat and start biting their faces off, because the whole thing about, I'd rather have extra gas, total BS. The missions that we did in Afghanistan and Iraq, being a FAC A, I was a FAC A in an RMC. I could not have done that without a crew member with me, without a crewmate. And
that's right.
The Rios and the Wizzos in the Navy are worth their weight in gold. I mean, it pains me to see the F-35 be single seat, even with all the automation and the upgraded systems, because I know how fortunate I was to always have a second crewmate. And I flew single seat. I have 1,000 hours single seat there in the Hornet. But I'll tell you, the amount of times that the mistakes were minimalized and contained because I had somebody with me just made me feel I slept better at night. And I know my wife slept better at night, and having a crewmate with me. So it's a huge part.
I appreciate that, Shorn, and so do all the Wizzos and Rios out there. And I know many people are going to go see the movie Top Gun Maverick here soon, and I think that's going to speak volumes to this. But I do want to point out one thing. There are so many single-seat F-16, F-15, F-18 guys selling teamwork to folks, but you got to look across the spectrum at the 2-seat aircraft, where you have 2 or more people who work interdependently, adaptively, dynamically toward a shared value goal. That's absolute teamwork. That's actually where we get the science of teamwork from, is from the cockpits of these dual-seated aircraft, the Grumman aircraft. So that's something that we'll never experience again in the future. The F community is probably the last bastion of that, and I hope they can continue doing what we've done and what our F4 brothers and sisters have done in the past, and same with the A6 community.
Yeah, that's great. Right.
But hey, I want to throw something at you. There's a big difference between a demo team in the Navy and one in the Air Force. Right?
Talk us through that.
Okay, so Topeka, Kansas, Shorn. We got out to Topeka from the USS Carl Vinson, and I'm going to back up a little bit. We're down at Fort Lauderdale flying the air show, great time, amazing times going on down there. Believe me, I'll do a quick Trump impersonation. Best show ever. Trust me, it's the best.
It was. And Ponch was famous. Ponch was on ESPN.
Yeah. But we get a
look back camera on Ponch during our demo, and they were playing it on ESPN live. I think it was recorded footage, but they were playing it live.
Yeah, so I've been on ESPN, but somebody here has been on Ballers. Who is that?
That's true.
That's right.
That's right.
With Steph Curry. Steph Curry, great American. Love him and his wife. They're fantastic people. For all those, my kids idolize him, and I love that because he's such a quality individual. All right, sorry.
It's so cool seeing you on that, man. That's another thing. Ballers, watch Ballers. Check out Shorn on Ballers. It's awesome. Years ago. But anyway, Fort Lauderdale. I think we flew the Friday and Saturday show. We got a call Saturday evening from the skipper or the OPSO. Hey, we need an aircraft out in San Diego. Ponch, we need to go take a student out to the carrier. One of our instructors is down. Get out there Sunday. By the way, take the better of the 2 jets.
Yeah.
So tell Disco and Stick the good news. Hey, you're flying the bad jet tomorrow. We're taking the good one across country. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, right? So a lot of comedy happening as we flew across the country, particularly in Texas, I believe. We stopped to get some gas, did a combat planning session with our gear on, while all these T-34 students are around us, doing all their navigation work. Shorn and I run through there, get gas, take our little fingers out and go, that looks about right.
No, the U.S. government pens, the black pens, 150 miles. Okay, we can do 4 of these pens. They're watching us in horror, the instructors.
Run back out of the jet, get to San Diego, get everything prepped up to go to the boat. Shorn brings his speedos out there. I think he spent time on the beach while I went out to the carrier.
Banana
So
hammocks.
he had his time on the beach while I'm out doing work. Anyway, take the student out there, get some good work done. The student is now a DCAG, great American. Get him called up. I'm out there cold. Haven't flown with him in the pattern much. Gets qualified. Crash Miles is the OIC of the det. He's the paddles out there, and I turn to him and I say, "Hey, love to get this aircraft out of here Thursday night so we can hit the Friday demo practice at Topeka, Kansas." And Crash is a demo guy, so he's like, "Oh, that doesn't sound smart to me, Ponch." And I said, "Okay, well, why don't we get the student's bags ready? I'll have a conversation with him. If he's ready to go, shoot us off the pointy end. And if you don't do that, we're going to miss the demo for the weekend, right? You're a demo guy. You got to pick between the two." And he said, "Well, I want to fly off the carrier." And I said, "Okay, so for you to fly off the carrier, we're going to miss the demo." That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So, smart move. Got a shot off the boat. Wake up the next morning pretty early. Fly off the Shorn, get to Topeka, Kansas, do a demo, and recall that the F-14 we were flying in is been on a carrier for the last 4 or 5 nights. It's dirty, it's nasty, right?
There's greasy handprints all over it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, it's nasty. We get our stuff out of the turtleback, clean up the aircraft, gas up, go do a quick demo, practice, and land. And there's the media, and the media comes up and they're like, "Hey, why is your aircraft so dirty?" And they look over the F-16s and their pressed flight suits and, their Maserati that they drove in and all this other stuff, the golf carts that move them 10 feet from aircraft to aircraft. And they look at us Navy guys and like, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, it's really simple. We work for a living. So last night I was on the USS Carl Vinson with a student, getting him carrier qualified. Ask them what they were doing last night, right? So there's a big difference between a demo, a Navy demo team, and an Air Force demo team. We're actually working. This is not our job to fly airships.
It's a collateral duty.
It's a collateral duty. And when you think about it, at that time of our lives, we were deploying in our at-sea tours, our squadron tours, and then as a FRS instructor, when you're flying the demo, we were actually gone 250 plus days out of the year, right? With the detachments and everything we're doing, going to the boat, flying air shows. We were gone a lot. But, some of us loved it. It was great to be on the road, getting out there and engaging with folks. But some of these memories are just insane when you go from air show to air show and see things, meet Americans. It was just a fantastic quality of life.
You remember the tornadoes had gone through Topeka like 2 nights before? We weren't sure if that show was even going to happen. They'd gotten ravaged by these thunderstorms.
But, I also remember taking my nephew, who was 2 years old at the time, and we got a lot of pictures with the Kansas City cheerleaders, Chiefs cheerleaders, which was awesome. So good memories.
So I wasn't going to bring that part up, but
it's for him, not for me.
Well, all right.
For your nephew.
So here, I got a couple of one-liners that you guys gave to us ahead of time. I'm just going to do these as thought provokers. Watch the Sears Tower. What's that about?
Chicago.
Why, is it going to move? No.
Would you almost hit it?
Crunch, the ironic thing about this is that is now my company's headquarters is Willis Tower.
Oh, right. Oh, yes.
But, that was the Chicago show. What a fun show that was. Rudy Malnati, one a great American. He ran the show. He also owns Pisano's Pizza in Italian restaurant. Rudy, such a amazing proponent. He just loves the military, man. He's great to work with. He's an awesome guy. But Ponch and I, when we did that show, as we talked earlier, Crunch, one of the things we would brief before these shows was, hey, what's gonna be in our run-in lines where we normally do our maneuvers. And I forgot that there is stuff that goes on behind the crowd too, as we reset, like for the sneak pass. And as we come off our normal maneuver and I'd start pulling, there's a building in our face, and that's, Ponch, hey, watch the Sears Tower. That's not normally there in normal air show sites.
Awesome. All right, here's the next one. Look, a baseball game. They're watching us.
Same show, repositioned right over Wrigley Field.
That's right. That was it was Wrigley, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's right below us. All our repositions were right there. It was insane. By the way, Stick and Disco were at the game. They were not narrating.
So they're at the baseball game, like, there's Ponch and Shorn.
Yeah.
You're out of position. Oh,
Yeah.
all right. This one's probably easy. I don't even know if you need a story on this one. This is the dumbest thing ever. Night show spirals over a dark ocean inverter. Was that the
gosh.
Twilight show?
That was
different
the
show.
Night show.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually did a night demo. We stayed pretty high though, didn't we, Ponch? Was it
Yeah,
1,500 or 1,000 or something?
it was uncomfortable.
It was still uncomfortable, but we did some of the maneuvers, and then it was just a lot of afterburner crunch. A lot of hey, look, there's 2 things on fire, coming out of the back end of the plane, and
It looks really, really cool, though. You just,
It is. I think Ponch is the one that said that quote, because as we're out there pulling G in pitch blackness, and accelerating and diving towards the ground at night, and we're not on night vision goggles, so you're just looking outside, and it's an instrument air show. It's like doing we practiced that as students in Navy flight school, because I did a T-45 tour at Post Command, which was awesome, down in Meridian, which is my old stomping grounds. But the students down there, we put them under, they go under the bag and they do a squirrel cage on their instruments, right? And we used to do it in the A4, and I was like, well, I guess I was going to use that training at some point in my career. I never thought I would. A squirrel cage in the complete darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But it was dumb.
There it is. Yep. All right. So a few other things that we had talked about. You guys had put together a whole bunch of different ideas for us ahead of time as we're getting ready for this. And one of the thoughts we had was, just talking about times that shows went completely sideways and didn't work out. I
gave you a good example of that one.
Yeah. Muskegon, right? And that, and that's probably good enough. But it looks like you got something else in here, something about, which is this one, your last flight. Was Muskegon your last flight? It wasn't your last one.
No, my last flight was Oceana, and that one didn't go sideways at all, actually. That was probably
that depends who you ask here. Perspective was sideways.
Let's ask Allison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was there, by the way. I was sitting on the flight line for that one.
Yeah,
that was to get somebody to marry you.
one of the coolest flights I've had a chance to be a part of. That was awesome. And Ponch, all the credit to Ponch. He asked me if it was okay, because he knew it was my last flight. And I'm like, of course it is, man. I think that's amazing. It's awesome. So Ponch, go ahead, man. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So in Cleveland, I had this horrible idea, or great idea it's when we met Senator Glenn and all that. We were up there. Had an idea, I fell in love. I was like, okay, this is the right person. And I asked the cookie lady, what's her name? Denise, yeah.
Denise.
And
I
asked her
for all the air show performers.
Yeah, we call her the cookie lady. I asked her, has anybody ever done a proposal during an air show? She's like, well, people have done it on behalf of others. So I got this idea that we would do it at the Oceana Air Show. My parents were coming out here. Everything was set. I asked her father for permission. I asked Shorn for permission too. Thank you, Shorn.
I said, Ponch, you are. It's okay. You can get married.
Yeah. So we set this all up with the air show. We were going to be shut down show center, Shorn's last flight, and that's what it was about. Hey, Shorn's flying the Tomcat demo, and then the next day he's going off to the Blue Angels. Pretty cool. But we also set up a moment where I would propose to Allison while we're at the top of our double emblem in there, and where we go live to the crowd. And we came down, pulled the ring out of my flight suit. Of course, she said yes. She had to say yes. I mean, that's the beauty of doing.
There was a million people watching, of course.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, she has no choice but to say yes. So, yay me. But the human factors involved in that week. Shorn's last flight. My parents were not coming now because my dad came down with West Nile. I'm about to propose to my fiance, or my girlfriend, my now wife. Shorn's, all these things, and I think our brief was pretty simple. It was, of course, we talked about it the week before and all that, but in up at the in the ready room, because we're at Oceana, we just really sat down and said, "Hey, man, this is a big one. We really got to, monitor our stuff today. Get compartmentalized, focus on this. We can only screw this thing up. I mean, that was it. Let's just do the best we can." And I think it was one of our better shows. It was great. there's pictures. There's so many amazing moments from that particular air show. So yeah, I got to share it with Shorn, and I appreciate him saying yes. Thank you, Shorn.
Well, I didn't say yes. You didn't propose to me.
I know.
Let's get this straight.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty powerful moment.
Yeah,
it was great.
It was pretty cool because you do that thing where basically you make a radio call and it's broadcast over the speakers to the whole crowd on the flight line, and you're far enough away that they can actually hear you, and that's when you did it, and it was very cool. So good.
Yeah,
man.
It was when we set up for the high speed pass.
Oh, is that when it was?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're setting up for the high speed pass, and Ponch talks to the crowd, and that's when he said, there's one special lady out there, Allison, will you marry me? And as we're coming in now at 200 feet at 500 knots, and he goes, boy, I hope she says yes.
That's it. I'm out of here. Command to jet forward.
But it was it couldn't have been a better last flight. I mean, I was on cloud nine. It's one of those out of body experiences before we even flew, because I just couldn't believe it was going to be my last Tomcat flight. I just I was a Tomcat guy through and through. I'd flown 1,500 hours, 6.5, 7 years at that point. I never thought I'd leave. You just don't think about it. And it was going to be my last demo. It was going to be my last Tomcat flight. And then I think Ponch asking me to do that recaged me to okay, back down to earth here. This is a normal flight. And we sat in the brief and said, hey, this is ours to screw up. We're at the top of our game. We've been doing it all season. But it was awesome. It was just a great flight. And Disco and Desco was there, Stick was there, and they came out. Everybody came out, and we got some pictures. The four of us demo team as I was getting ready to move in PCS out of Oceana. But yeah, it was a bittersweet flight because I've never gotten in a Tomcat again. I've seen plenty of them in museums, but never actually gotten to get in another one.
Yeah,
I'm glad I was your last, Shorn. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. Me too.
That's awesome. All right, fellas, this has been excellent. This is exactly what I was hoping to talk about today. Is there anything you guys want to bring up before we kind of talk about what you're doing now? Anything we missed? Any good stories you got? You think you want to?
I think there's hundreds, but this is awesome.
Yeah,
I think the question that I get the most from anybody is, what did you like flying better, the Tomcat or the Hornet? Because to this day, on my United lanyard, I wear a Tomcat pin and a Hornet pin with my Navy wings on. It's on my lanyard. And when you go into a brief with people, they're like, "Oh, Navy guy," and right away they're like, "Oh, Tomcats and Hornets. Wow, I've met a Tomcat guy." I'm like, "Yeah, we're still walking around."
Yeah.
But which one do you like flying? And I kind of equated it to, because I had the good fortune of flying every model of the F-14 and the F-18. I flew A, B, D, F-14, and I flew A, B, C, D, E, F in the Hornet. And I equate it to flying the Tomcat is like getting in a 65 Chevy big block, Corvette. And it's loose. It's got a ton of power. It's fun to drive, easy to lose control of. I'm like, flying a Hornet's like getting in a 370Z. Everything's tight, and it's fast. It just doesn't feel like a Tomcat though. And I prefer the Tomcat any day, especially the D. Just that was a beast of a machine. It had so much capability. Definitely miss it.
Awesome. Very cool. So what are you guys doing now, Ponch? What do you've kind of alluded to it. Tell me about what you're up to these days.
Taking a lot of lessons from the cockpit, the flight deck, married them up with complexity theory, understanding of flow, cognitive science, and help create what is known as the flow system. So it's growing in popularity. It's really how organizations can create agility, innovation, develop resilience, and of course, safety. And that's what a lot of organizations need today. So my big thing is I could take any fighter, aviator, particularly F-14 folks, and turn them into top 10% coaches in the world within a week. And that's just because of our backgrounds and a lot of things we covered today. So that's what I've been doing. Do a lot of keynotes, do a lot of podcasts. In fact, the next podcast is for a medical system on lean and actually flow and the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act.
Nice.
Have 3 books out there. Got a 4th one underway. Doing a little bit of work on a movie called No Fallen Heroes. Right now we have 22 veterans taking their lives each day, 17 to 22. We have the horrible things that happened on the GW here in Norfolk. 8 sailors have either killed themselves or died in the last year aboard that ship. we've got a crisis here on our hands that we need to solve, and that's what Shorn's doing in the Navy Reserve as well. Is we're really trying to tackle that within the DoD. Working with Defense Innovation Unit, I brought that up, accelerating commercial technology into the DoD, into the warfighters' hands. But I tell you, everything you and our community knows about teamwork, leadership, it scales. It scales across everything we do, and we don't always have to push the flag on people or really push our backgrounds, but just talk and talk about what it's like to be on a high performing team, what it's like to achieve some type of flow. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Cool. And Shorn, how about you? What are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I'm just recently, I was actually over in Africa doing an exercise for Sixth Fleet over in Cotonau, Benin, which was amazing place. And I got back to the hotel from dinner, and my phone rang, and it said it was a 703 number, and it said Pentagon. I'm like, I don't know anybody at the Pentagon, and it was Vice Admiral John Mustin, who is the Chief of the Navy Reserve, and congratulated me and said, "Hey, the list is going to come out. Wanted to let you know you're nominated for Rear Admiral." It was an amazing phone call. I've been kind of chugging away here in the reserves. I'm in year 20, completing year 28 in September. And I've just been very fortunate with my commands and all the folks that I've gotten to work with in the reserve. I've gotten to command a NATO unit. I've gotten to command a Sixth Fleet unit doing West Africa work. And now I'm the program commander for the Navy Emergency Preparedness Liaison Officers, who all of the branches of services have, they call them EPLOs. So the Air Force and the Army call them EPLOs. The Marine they call them MEPLOs. But anytime FEMA or any government agency goes in for a crisis, it could be a natural disaster, it could be the Super Bowl, it could be the inauguration, anything when they request DoD support, my folks go in as liaisons, and they make sure that the Title 10 forces are doing the things that they're allowed to be doing by law. We can't use DoD personnel for law enforcement, but the Guard personnel and the Coast Guard can do that. Things like that. So my guys are qualified. I have 102 06s right now. Yeah, it's
That's
like
what's that? 5% of the 06s in the Navy.
30% of the reserve 06s. Yeah,
there you go.
It is crazy, but they're all. But these guys are all amazing, and guys and girls, they're amazing. These are all post command. They're rock stars. The folks that I get to work with. My deputy Scott Wright, he's at another level. He's a nuke SWO, which I'm like, man, having a nuke SWO as a deputy is the way to go. These guys are unbelievable. He's just so talented, but I'm very fortunate. A lot of my career has been made by those around me, and I've just been fortunate enough to be part of those teams. And so now I'm kind of waiting to hear if Senate confirmation happens and what my next job will be. But from what I understand, there is no bad job that I can get. So I'm excited no matter where it is and what I get to do. And my wife's been super supportive. I don't know if Ponch, I don't know if you remember Lona. My wife's a VF211 Rio, so she was a backseater. That's why I have to say all these good things about Rios, so I could keep that happy wife, happy life, right? But no, she doesn't get to hear all those. I'm usually poking jokes at her, like calling her trunk monkey and things like that. But no, she's
not advised.
no, she's a great sport, and she's a great support, and we're just excited. She's been nothing but happy, and so now she's getting to go through some of this flag officer training with me, and having a wife that's deployed and worn the uniform is kind of interesting. Around some of these wives that have been ombudsmen and things like that. So it's interesting for her, but just happy to keep serving and to work with all the great folks that are serving right now. And it's awesome to get back together with you and Ponch and, reminisce on old times here in the Tomcat community.
That's awesome. And you're also an airline pilot from time to time. And something that we were talking about all these names here, all the people that you named in the demo team that are airline pilots all fly for United. Can I just point that out?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Stick is a Southwest guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
Southwest guy, but you're right. But Demo's at United. Roll is at United.
Disco's
at United. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it just keyed in my mind. I'm like, hey, how about that?
That's true.
What are you flying, by the way, there? What are you flying?
I'm 756 is one fleet, but I fly the 76 typically. I'm going to Madrid tonight.
Oh, Well, good luck. Enjoy.
Yeah, that was that call right before we started this. Hey, can you fly to Madrid tonight? Because I was supposed to go to Dublin late, but the Madrid flight's earlier, and I'm local. So
yeah, flying out of Dulles, I take it.
Yep, right out of Dulles.
Right. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's a Friday morning today. It's beautiful for once out here in Virginia for the last week. I really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. I really like the fact that we were able to talk to you guys about that demo. Everybody has seen demos. How many of our listeners were like, oh my God, I will never forget the Tomcat demo? Matter of fact, many of our listeners are going to be like, I have seen those guys. I've seen you perform. I was at the Topeka show, whatever it is. There's going to be people who think of that. So I really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us. And for everybody who's out there listening, thanks once again for joining us on the F-14 Tomcast. We got episodes every 2 weeks. Tune in for the next one. See you soon. Gentlemen, thanks for coming. Ponch, Shorn, any last words?
No.
Awesome.
Tomcats forever.
There it is.
Baby.
All right, gents. Thanks much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Crunch.
You've been listening to the F-14 Tomcast, part of the Air Combat Experience, brought to you by BVR Productions. Got a question for the show? Send an email to questions@f14tomcast.com or leave a message on our listener line at 877 Mach 101 extension 3. That's 877-622-4101 extension 3. For updates on this podcast and our other military aviation themed shows, visit bvrpro.com and follow the Air Combat Experience on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks for listening.